Welcome to episode 98 of the Necronama.com. I am James Sabata, horror author, screenwriter, co-host of the podcast you're listening to right now. And I'm not usually a fan of hospital procedurals, but I watched all 8 seasons of this, and I can't wait to talk about Kal Penn's character.
And I'm Don Guillory, author, historian, educator, co-host of this podcast, and I don't know what the hell we're going to talk about now because I watched something completely different.
Joining us today, we have a guy who watched the 1977 version of House. Jeff Whitmire is here, everybody. Jeff, tell us a little bit about yourself, man.
I am a musician from Pennsylvania, primarily write comedy music, but also serious music. But lately, my new foray, beginning last year, was to write parody songs about horror movies, which seems to be how all the horror movie crazy people keep recognizing and calling and asking me to do podcasts and stuff. But no, I'm just kidding. I'm a huge horror fan, so it was a no-brainer that I should do some more stuff on horror movies. So I began doing horror movie parodies, starting with a host one last year and planning on putting out an album this year.
Oh, that's awesome.
Nice.
And before we went on, you were telling me about a challenge that you try to do each year.
Yeah. So every year there's the FALM, the February Album Writers Month, and the goal is to write 14 songs in a month. And last year I did it swimmingly. This year probably going to end up with 12 just because this month was pretty draining. But the idea is to write 14 songs a month. So because I am putting out 2 albums this year, one of originals and one of the horror movie parodies, I decided to devote the time to both of those and was able to get enough content for the most part for both albums. So this year I ended up with 12. So I will accept that this time. Next year, though, back to 14.
Meanwhile, the rest of us are like, holy shit, that's a lot. That's amazing. I'm like, I wrote 3 paragraphs yesterday.
While watching this movie, I can't lie. I actually did think of a joke because I was watching how William Katz stares at that title screen about 18 times during the course of the movie. And I'm just thinking to myself, yes, there's James's writing process right there.
Pretty much, yeah. No, I was actually thinking about his writing process and how fucking true it is. Because he's either staring at this blinking cursor and like finding other things in the room, like he'll be like looking at it and then be like, oh, I gotta go check on this over here, you know, or he apparently wrote an entire fucking story in a couple days, you know, like, but there's no in between for him, and I thought that really resonated with me.
That seems pretty accurate, yeah.
That moment where he says, I need solitude, and I just keep sitting there like, son of a bitch. It's like I tell my wife, like, I will send my wife to visit family and whatever, because I'm like, I need to be here by myself so I can be productive, because I don't need any extra excuses to like goof off, right? Or to not write or to not read some things I should be reading. The most productive I was the 3 to 4 weeks I was in China. I couldn't talk to anybody. I had probably a 30-minute window where I could talk to my wife and daughter. And, I would go and teach during the day for the 2 or 3 hours I was teaching. And I would have about 7 to 8 hours to myself to where I had to do something. So I just sat there and I finished the last book, probably about 60% of it in a hotel room in China. So I'm like, we need to end COVID so I could just fucking go somewhere where I can't read anything else because I don't know the language. I have very poor access to social media. I don't know any of the TV channels, or even if I do have the TV channels, it's the same 3 movies in English playing over and over again. So I can sit there and write. So I think that's how I'll end up finishing the next book. I'm just going to, find some relative that's committed suicide in their house and because it was haunted and just basically say, you know what? I think I'm going to live here.
I need you to go back to China, too. I got a lot done while you were gone.
You know what? That's what friends are for. Just the housekeeping. And it was like, hey, your laundry's done. I'm like, oh,
solitude.
Now I'm just picturing Don running around with just like a blanket wrapped around him like a cape, yelling solitude to the people bringing him his laundry.
Oh, dude.
Up on the roof of the hotel, like the hunchback.
And they're like, wow, writing looks fun.
Yeah. You know what's crazy is I guarantee you probably the neighbors that live across the street from me, the times that I'm writing up here, I'll put on some music and I might have the window open, or I'll just start pacing and I've got this big whiteboard. I just start writing across all of it. And it looks like, Charlie Day's character from It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia when he's trying to figure out the conspiracy. So I've got all that going on, and then I will literally just wear some of the most ridiculous stuff because, either my office is warm or it's cold or whatever. And then I'll forget what I'm wearing and I'll walk outside and it's like, it's like half a superhero costume and, a Soviet era Ushanka. And my wife saw me walk out there. She's like, what the fuck is wrong with you? I was like, what are you talking about? She's like, you don't think the neighbor's going to try and kill you? I was like, why? He's like, you're wearing a Soviet Ushanka. I'm like, that's their problem, not mine. This motherfucker's warm. And so I'll go back upstairs, continue writing or continue reading, and then I'll come back downstairs and, get something to eat, take a shower, whatever the time calls for.
So normally I would say, Jeff, why did you pick this film? But you didn't. And then I would say, I picked it. And I would say, why? But I didn't either. So Don, why'd you pick this film?
Yes. Well, I figured probably people were worried or sorry, not worried, but I guess getting bothered by, I guess some of the movies I kept picking had like a racial undertone to it. There was The Hate You Give and Us and Get Out, Birth of a Nation.
Candyman, His House.
Yeah. Well, His House. I thought Candyman was yours. Anyway. And I was sitting there, it's like, I've got this long list of movies that I keep saying to James, if we don't have somebody or somebody hasn't picked a movie, these are the ones. And none of them have any of that type of social commentary. I'm like, we got this movie and this movie and this movie. And I kept saying House. It's like, we need to fucking hit House. He's like, why? I loved that fucking movie as a kid. I haven't seen it forever. I need an excuse to watch it again because it was awesome. And, my cousins in Virginia, it was one of the staple movies aside from some of the slashers that we would go and rent and watch and just basically laugh at or just get grossed out by. And then, it's a movie that I feel, even watching it now in 2021, a lot of it has aged well. I mean, even the practical effects might look a little bit goofy, but they look like some really creepy fucking monsters. I loved it. I still like it. And, as a William Catt fan as a kid, having seen him in The Greatest American Hero and then moving to this, like I was already sold. That, and you had Richard Mall from Night Court. So this movie was made for me to watch. As goofy as some of the stuff is, as I guess somewhat over the top some of the stuff is, I loved it. And I definitely have a different impression of it watching it as an adult. And as we've said with other movies, watching it as a parent, there's a different feel to this movie. Mm-hmm. There's a different feel, having, being somebody who writes, there's definitely a different feeling because when I was a kid, I wasn't focused on his job. I was focused on, this house is haunted and some shit's going to come get him. As an adult, I'm like, damn, I think the scariest thing is that blinking cursor on that page where all he has is the title. And everybody is sitting there saying like, well, when's your next book coming out? I'm your biggest fan. When's your next book coming out? Oh, This is going to be wonderful. I love this movie. I mean, this is I'm not going to put it in the top anything, but I will just say this is one of those movies that I've loved and I can still go back and watch now.
So I had never seen it and you kept talking about it.
Really?
And I read the spoilers and they sell this movie like a straight horror film, and I was completely uninterested. I was like, okay, so you have some PTSD from Vietnam, and now you're in a haunted house, like whatever. And I didn't think much more of it. And then one day, Jeff here tweets that he was watching it, and I was like, hey, if you ever want to come on the show, my co-host can't shut up about this shit. and so I pulled up a trailer. And I was like, what the fuck? This looks amazing. Why haven't I seen this? And so my reading spoilers has finally kicked me in the face.
Thank you.
With that said, on top of that, Sean S. Cunningham and you have Steve Miner directing. Like, these are Friday the 13th staple people. The soundtrack.
Manfredini, yeah. Yep.
Yes, like all of this. is straight up my alley. Plus, Kane Hodder was the stunt coordinator for this. Like, this should have always been in my constant rotation, but it was not. And I blame the people that wrote the spoilers for taking all of the fun out of this film, because this film is fun as shit. And when
I tell you,
when you
I was gonna say the reason I was
up,
watching
it looks amazing.
Yeah. The reason I was watching it that day, going off what Don said, is I woke up one morning. I'm 44 years old, and I also have the same, memories of House growing up. It was that fun movie that we used to put on as kids because a lot of crazy shit happens in this movie, and it just stuck in my head. And I was like, wow, I haven't watched that in a while. This or House 2, and well, the House 4 we kept to mention Kane Hodder as a pizza, but can't ignore that. But yeah, because this movie, because we mentioned Richard Mullen, William Catt, and George Wendt, and then it's basically the Friday the 13th crew got together and said, let's pick the most 80s cast ever, and make a movie. And but it's one of those movies that really sticks in your head. And I woke up that day and I was like, man, I just really want to watch these again. And they were on Tubi, and I tweeted about them, and that's where James saw that. But watching them again, there's still a lot to love about it. It, like Don said, it's very timely. I mean, I didn't watch it. I'm a father now too. I have a 2-year-old son, and that ending, I'm bawling at the end of this movie. But there's a lot to say about, like, the movie has a lot to say about holding onto your past and having those demons in your closet and having those be manipulated. Yes. It's a really, really, really solid storyline, and it's a lot of fun.
I would add the thing that surprised me the most. Richard Mole is fucking fantastic in this. like I love Bull Shannon. That's like one of the highlights of my childhood, right? Like, he's the reason I watched the show. And I liked him in a couple other things he was in, but he surprised me with how well, like, he's still very Richard Mole in this, but it works. Mm-hmm. It really fits his character. And then when you get to the end and he's the crazy undead thing, like, he's fucking great with this. Like, it works with his body type, but also the voice really, like, comes through, and it still has personality. And I don't know, I was really impressed with him in this.
Here's one of the things is, as far as talking about the difference of watching this as a kid, watching it as an adult, right? As a kid, you're not looking for all the humor because you don't necessarily get that shit, right? So when the fish comes alive and the that monster lady, and then you got the thing that's coming out of the closet, the arms that grab him out of the medicine cabinet, all that stuff as a kid, you're like, fuck, that's scary as shit, right? But the adult stuff is all too real, right? And it's all a little bit interesting in some cases, to where, this guy is a successful writer. He's got this smash hit of a book, this bestseller that, 4 years later, there are people still lining up to buy it and get his autograph and things like that, to where, there's that thing where people are kind of consumed with his life, whether it's his publisher or even the realtor when he inherits the house. Like, oh, well, you could do this with this house and you could do this. We could probably auction all this stuff and you could make a lot of money off of it. So you're seeing all this stuff that as an adult you would probably consider scary, daunting, maybe give you some anxiety. But it's not until, at least we're introduced to him to where we get a real indication of what his fear is, right? He's lost his son. And watching this as an adult, as a comedy horror movie, it doesn't feel like it's that serious of a problem, which kind of bothered me that hasn't been processed that early, because it's kind of like he calls the FBI, is like, hey, any news about my son? Well, not even that, but he calls and they're like, oh, he's in a meeting. It's like, I'll wait. And then 2 seconds later, the guy picks up the phone and it's like, hey, any news about my son? Nope, we're still looking for him. And as an adult, you're watching, because I completely forgot about that from when I was a kid. You're watching, you're thinking like, this guy should be a little bit more concerned that his kid is missing. Not only that, shouldn't his ex-wife be a little bit concerned that their kid is missing? Because that doesn't even come up in the conversation. It's like, it doesn't even come up in the conversation. She's at an awards show. She can't be bothered with that.
And yet they're not the worst parents.
Do they say how long? That's one thing I never got from this. Do they say how much? Not that I'm saying that downplays it, but how much time transpired from him going missing to what's happening now? Like, has it been a couple of years or?
It feels like it's been between when he wrote the book and that current day. So, right. It could have been, I don't think it was, right after he wrote the book or I'm sorry, right before he wrote the book, because it would kind of seemed like a weird thing for him to go on and publish the book and his kid is still, missing and no one talks about it. But it's also weird because that one lady who was obsessed with him was like, oh, I love your wife. She's so wonderful. I never miss a show. Mm-hmm. And he's like, ex-wife. But never brings up like, has anybody found your son? Is there any news? It just seems like a weird way that they handle it from the beginning, which is then I guess they make up for it when he's dealing with all the trauma of missing his son and trying to figure out where he is and having these flashbacks of him disappearing, which those two moments are scary as hell because he looks up, the kid's gone, a car drives off, so he's thinking somebody kidnapped him. Then he sees the kid in the pool, and it's just one of those things where as a parent, I don't know how I would process that because there are those moments where, you think you know where your child is and you panic because, you thought they were to your right and you look over and damn it, they're to your left. And you're like, oh my God, I didn't know what to do with my life for the past 5 seconds because I thought you were missing. Now imagine, we're talking, let's just maybe a few months that he's been gone, maybe a year. But it definitely seems like it's been enough time for the mom to, I guess, adjust.
Yeah, I've kind of moved on a little bit.
The feeling it had been like a year or so, but they never really say. And my reasoning for that was when they show the flashback, the aunt is very different than how she goes out.
Right.
She doesn't seem like the house has consumed her yet. She does have that really creepy ass fucking smile to the cops for some weird ass reason. But other than that, and then just the fact that this took a toll on their relationship and they've had time to move on. Like she seems like she's like, I don't know, just back to mostly normal. So I definitely think it's been like a year, but that also makes the ending weird to me because everybody's just like, oh, there's Jimmy. Yay.
Well, in defense of that, I will say that one thing the movie does do well is like when they have that phone call when he has to turn on the music because I've moved on, I'm adjusted, I've got a bunch of friends over. Yeah. They do kind of sell the moment, I think, for both of them that this is still very fresh because even the wife kind of says she kind of calls him back to the phone and then says never mind. They do a little bit of a setup to show that this is still pretty fresh and there's still a lot of feelings there and this could end up well at the end depending on what happens.
Right. Yeah, without I guess beating you over the head with it as far as, where's Jimmy? I really miss him,
Well, and I like that it's not like tomorrow's the 1-year anniversary of when Jimmy disappeared,
right.
Yeah, that forced exposition.
Yeah. Aunt's house.
Finds him in the cage at the end and he's like, oh, you have a mustache now, Jimmy. Here's
the funny thing about that. I was trying to do the math in my head when we're talking about how long he had been gone, because it's obvious that when Roger, when he goes into the closet, right, and goes back to Vietnam and has this moment where he's with his friend and who's been and makes this decision to not, mercifully kill him, and then he comes back. And he leaves at midnight, but he's obviously coming back the next day during daylight. And as far as the movie, he's only been gone for maybe a minute, right? But when he comes back, it's been, I don't know, maybe 12 hours, maybe a little bit later, because, his neighbor's gone and gotten food and come back, or at least helped himself to some alcohol and some food. So I don't think it's first thing in the morning. I think, he probably tied one on and was waiting for him and just, passed out. So I think that maybe for Jimmy to be gone, Jimmy, as far as in that weird world, that alternate reality, whatever, where, was it Ben had taken him, probably been gone maybe 30 minutes, maybe an hour for Jimmy because he hasn't aged.
Right.
And, maybe it has been a year and a half for the rest of them. So, you got those the way the dimensions work. The time works within those different dimensions.
I kind of thought the same thing, too. Yeah. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, James.
No, go ahead. Go ahead, Jeff.
No, I was gonna say I kind of thought the same thing too. And they've covered this in a lot of other movies too, where whatever world or dimension that Jimmy was kind of trapped in at that point, time was stable, time was stagnant, so he didn't age the entire time he was in there. I kind of thought that's what they were selling. I did want to say that scene too, where he goes into the closet. I really like that because I kind of felt like that was the final metaphor for the house having to drag him into that last memory, which is essentially what happened.
Right.
Because, William Katt's character Roger comes into the house with, three things dangling over his head: the loss of his son, the divorce, and the PTSD of what happened to Ben. Because he didn't, mercifully shoot him like he had been asked to do. And so he comes into that, and then in the flashback with his aunt, she does say the house knows you, it's going to trick you. And so during the course of the movie, it plays on all three of those things. The wife comes back as the crazy prosthetic monster thing. Jimmy speaks to him from the walls. And then the whole Ben story kind of slowly unfolds little by little in flashbacks. We get just a little chunk at a time. But for that last moment, for him to finally face it, essentially the house had to drag him into that memory, via the harpoon. And that was one moment I did like, because it seemed like that was the one last thing he was hanging on to.
Yeah, he was definitely fighting to not deal with it. And the house is like, nope, too bad.
Nope, you're facing this. Yep.
It's a really weird therapist, though, isn't it?
Yeah, it's not evil at all. It just helps authors finish their books.
Well, I guess in this case, I guess you could make the parallel to House MD, because the house was diagnosing his problem and then helping cure it.
Good Lord.
There should have been a cane fall off and there's.
If that were the case, at some point there'd be a whiteboard with the word lupus on it, because the word lupus shows up in every House episode. So the house is like, okay, maybe this is lupus. No, I don't think it's lupus. Move on.
Oh my God. This is really coming back to haunt me. Maybe only 5 minutes has passed, because Harold just seems like the kind that would have already cracked a couple open and taken a nap. So.
Well, I did what I could.
Well, I mean,
don't let go.
He shows
I'll
up.
Hold on forever. Too bad.
He shows up at midnight with Chinese food. Because my first thought was, okay, this is definitely an 80s horror movie, because time doesn't matter. I mean, as far as like the time of day doesn't matter. And, the intrusive neighbor with no boundaries is kind of like, hey, I know it's midnight, but I got some Chinese food in case you want to eat it. And I immediately thought two things. One, this guy has an ulterior motive. And then two, I was like, no, maybe he's a nice guy. He's lonely. He wants somebody to hang out with. It's his favorite author, at least an author he likes. So he's trying to gain some type of favor with him. But then I was like, either way, it's still weird that it's midnight that he decides to show up and bring up some Chinese food.
Well, that was twice, because he showed up with the pizza at midnight too.
Yeah.
And what was funny is, when during the cop scene where he just barges in for the coffee, the whole movie I'm watching, I'm like, he never locks his door until the undead soldier, his friend, is outside the door. That's the only with what I think it's what I'm trying to think of the weapon here, M17 maybe. Someone's gonna call me out on that. So when the guy's actually outside the door with the weapon, that's the first time he finally locks the door. Doesn't lock it at all for Harold.
And it really bothered me that it took him so long to lock the door. like he's like up against the door, his buddy's trying to break in, and then he like casually reaches over and locks it.
This'll keep him out.
But I think it's funny, Don, you said that you thought your first thought was how crazy Harold is, and my first thought was, why don't I have neighbors like this? I need neighbors who bring me food. Like, that's a great thing. But I do have one question about Harold. Why the fuck does he have like random pieces of one of Roger's books? What is that about? Pulls out like this handful of pages.
It's a lot of intense bathroom reading. That's the result of that.
Like, what in the fuck was that?
Look, he is Roger's #1 fan, obviously. I mean, he's read it so much, and he probably had like little notes that he'd taken down where he's like, oh, well, actually, this probably means this. Oh, this is probably a clue about the next book. Because even the publisher's like, hey, when's your next one? We need to work on it. Send me some pages. And I think, at least from gauging the fans that showed up, the publisher or his agent, and then, of course, Harold. It seems as though this book is almost on the level of In the Mouth of Madness, where like there are people who are like rabid fans about it, to the point where, I can't even remember how far back that one lady, how far back she was in line, but she's like talking over and around people to try and have a conversation with Roger while she's in line waiting for an autograph for a book that she obviously already owns and has read many times.
When she's only interested in talking about his wife.
But it doesn't matter. I mean, she's obviously a fan of his and wants to know those details, right? Because maybe he won't, he won't have enough time for her when she gets up there, which is always our fear when we're meeting somebody, right?
True. I kind of felt like the writers of this hate their fans. like, did they have a lot of really bad interactions at conventions or something? Because man.
I can tell you right now, if they have a problem with their fans, I will take their fans. I would gladly. And I'm going to speak for you too, James. If you ever see us at a convention and you want to buy us a drink, not, soda or even just a hard liquor, I'm game. Let's do it.
I prefer hot wings. Oh, anyway. So
well, that's it. I'm not...
But no, I mean, I know it's there for comedic effect, but there was part of me that just wanted like a normal fan in there too, to like really throw it off. Like this one guy who really just wants to talk about this book that he likes and like asking normal, respectful questions while everyone around him's crazy. I thought that would be fun.
Well, there was the punk girl. I mean, she showed up and she was like, I really like your book. I really love your book. And that was probably the most normal, I guess, interaction that there was. I mean, aside from, hey, let me make this about myself and say, hey, can you make it out to John, my number one fan, or my good friend, because some people, I'm like, I have no problem doing that, but it seems like, at least for Roger, it's kind of like, oh yeah, let's go ahead and let me just go ahead and put this on here. Because this really doesn't mean anything because you're not really my friend. But he does take the time out, whether he was doing it sarcastically or not. Like the punk girl who goes up, gets her the autograph in her book and everything, and thanks him. He just immediately turns around and is like, I love your hair. It seemed genuine. Maybe it wasn't, but it wasn't kind of this dismissive thing of, oh, thanks for reading my book, or, have a good one. That kind of automated response that we sometimes give to people that we meet, and not taking an interest in them too. So I thought that was kind of a cool thing with him, as opposed to, everybody else there who's like, I want to know about you. I want to know this. I want to know that. I need some information about the next book. I want to know about the wife that you guys are divorced now. What happened? What's going on? It seems like he was as respectful to her as she was to him, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Because, she was being genuine and he was being genuine back.
I think it was hard to distinguish just watching it, though, because that scene is just really awkwardly shot.
Yeah.
And I think they really wanted to put it in that perspective for him, like the POV of this is what he's seeing and everything. But yeah, I mean, I agree with Don. That the interaction with the punk girl seemed authentic, and I know the whole thing with the one lady wanting to know everything. I know a lot of people like that when they fall into a celebrity, a writer, or a singer or something, it's not just about the person, it's about the whole thing. It's about the relationship. Why are you guys not together?
Right.
So I think I agree, though. I think if that scene was shot a little bit differently, it would have felt a little more genuine, but just how awkwardly they filmed it.
Well, I kind of liked it because it really portrays like the chaos feeling of it. Like you can feel that he doesn't want to be there.
Yeah,
right. And so I think that comes through really well. But anyway.
Now the scene after, though, really baffles my mind, though, because that's the scene where they're talking. He's talking to his publisher, his agent, and why does Steve Miner shoot it from the other side of the street where you can hardly hear them?
Oh yeah,
that one blows my mind. I'm like, what are you doing? I know I'm deep diving into like the movie element here too, but that was a really odd choice.
No, I think that's good. Like that's the kind of stuff that like I feel like we don't do that as much now. Like maybe somebody learned from that mistake, you know what I mean? But it also like it kind of gives like that that feeling like we're watching him, like his fans were watching him, and like we're trying to. And maybe I'm totally overstretching on this, but this is just the feeling I got from it that was kind of cool. It's like being one of them, trying to hear what he's talking about, and is there a scoop about his book, or and I don't think that's what they were going for, but I think it kind of gave that cool aesthetic.
It worked that way.
Overall, I think it sucks. I agree with you. I'm just trying to find something redeeming in it. I do like that, the whole looking down on horror doesn't happen here. It's the direct opposite. Like usually horror is kind of treated like in The Mouth of Madness, like Don brought up a little bit ago. Horror is this thing that makes a lot of money, but it's not what real writers do, or that kind of thing. And we get that a lot. And in this, it's what the fuck do you mean you're going to write this other thing? Horror. We're cashing in. Everybody wants this. Everyone loves this. And that was refreshing. I'm not used to seeing that portrayal.
Well, not only that, you've also got the point where his publisher, when they're talking about what he wants to write next, right? And his response, or his agent publisher's response is, nobody wants to talk about Vietnam anymore. And that immediately made me think about when I was lecturing in person with my film as history courses, where that was that point in the 80s where people were just now starting to talk about Vietnam as far as in various forms of media. So, TV and television and movies, whether we're talking about HBO, cable television, or basic cable, network television, movies. So you were just starting to get honest movies about Vietnam. So you've got, Platoon, Hamburger Hill, you have Full Metal Jacket, all around that same time period. And the rationale for it taking so long was what the publisher stated, which was, I guess, a little bit changed, where it was people aren't ready to talk about it right now because of the war fatigue. And what, at least what Roger is pointing out is like, I mean, saying it without saying it is, I don't give a shit if that's what you don't want. That's what I'm going to do. Mm-hmm. And it was really about him exercising his demons and getting down to his own trauma and figuring out, dealing with the guilt of what he had to face during the war. And then also, the experiences that he left behind, or people that he left behind. And just even when he's having that first moment where he's thinking about what he's going to put in the book, it's that flashback, or at least that memory of their platoon leader saying, waking him up. And he's like, hey, we got a war to lose. Mm-hmm. And I immediately thought, like, God damn, like, even in this horror movie, they're being honest about how people were feeling about Vietnam that were actually there. And I've had the pleasure of speaking to some Vietnam veterans, and they will be the first ones to be honest with you about that shit. And it was simply like, I just wanted to come home. Like, that was all I was focused on, was making sure I came home. Friends didn't come home, but and the majority of the ones that I've talked to said the same shit. Like, we shouldn't have fucking been there. We had no reason to be there. And you're starting to have a significant amount of Iraq and Afghanistan veterans who are saying the same stuff, where it's, well, I shouldn't say starting. I mean, there's, even in 2003, 6 months into the war, there were people saying, like, no, we need to get the fuck out of there. It's going to be bad. It's going to keep getting worse. It's going to keep going.
It's almost like war isn't a great thing. My one complaint with this movie, well, I have two, but we'll get to Tanya in a bit. My complaint with this part of the story is, I would like if he didn't know what he wanted to write about, and then the house brought it out of him. Like, it pulled that trauma that he didn't want to. Like, I want to see him fight this. Like, no, I don't want to fucking go there. I don't want to do this. Like, I know that's not the movie we were given, and I know that that's not the horror comedy way, but I think this could be a really strong movie if you went that way. Like, how therapy makes you tackle your trauma. Yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, I do feel like, definitely not to the extent you're saying, and I would have liked to have seen that too. Like, I don't want to do this. I mean, he did say I needed to write this book. Obviously, this was a demon he had to exercise, and that was the big final thing. But I do feel like it wasn't necessarily a fight, but he was holding back, because the reason why the Vietnam story, to me at least, seems so broken up is he has to keep stopping. Mm-hmm. You have the first flashback, and then he's like, nope, I'm done, and he has to stop. So there were a couple times I think there where it seemed like he had to stop, not necessarily anything the house was doing at that time. Now, I think there was, I know it spreads out a lot. There was one moment where something did happen in the house, and that's why he stopped. But that was the feel I got, that he felt he had a right, he had to exercise it, but he couldn't get that stuff out. That's why he kept staring at that blinking cursor.
Yeah.
And then ultimately that was the last thing. I mean, he started to face the thing with his wife. He was really dealing with the stuff with Jimmy, but finally that last moment in Vietnam, the house had to drag out of him.
Well, so I think that's why I would like this, because the house has to drag it out at the end. So I think if the house had been causing this and making him go this route, it would be stronger. But again, not the film that we were given, so I accept that.
Well, even with the house dragging stuff out, it also makes me question, when the aunt says, warns him about, oh, this house knows this stuff about it'll play on your fears, it'll whatever, right? It makes me question, with her, like what did it have over her? Because it's obviously, understands. I mean, from a viewer's perspective, we understand what the house knows about, or that the house knows about Roger, and is actually playing. Well, I shouldn't be playing off of it, but it's using his fears to make him face those fears or those uncertainties about what had taken place or his insecurities.
Yeah, I mean, the house is that whole thing where she says the house knows you. Like, I think that really plays into what I want from this, where I want it to be the one that pulls the trauma from him. And it does to a degree. I just think that it could be a lot stronger and crazier.
Right. Well, anyway. I think if they did it now, I mean, I think there's a lot more they could explore to, I guess, lean more on the horror and less on the humor. Because I think there's a great balance between those two. Because even with that monster that turns into his wife and then turns back into the monster, like, in all honesty, that's not a scary fucking monster. It's creepy. It's weird. It's goofy. And it's
hilarious.
It's just one of those things where you look at him like,
she has boogers.
Yeah,
it's hilarious.
I also thought about Chet from Weird Science. Every time I see this, I just think of Chet when they turn him into the snot monster or whatever it is.
But I love that monster, though. Like, I think that the reveal, the fake reveal, when you think that he shot his wife, that's fucking great. It's done really well.
Yeah, I thought they were going there. Like, it was going to turn out that it was his wife when I first.
They totally sell it that way. Yep. Like, I mean, it's great. Right down to even like when the hand is on its own later, like it still has her nail polish. Like, that's how far they went with this, And But yeah, it really plays into the house is evil and it made you see this thing and now you killed your wife. And the step that they take that makes this so good is that they go out on the porch.
Right.
Because we expect in a place where this happens that it's confined to inside. They go out to the porch and she's still her human self. That's fantastic.
But conveniently hidden by the bushes so that Harold doesn't see. Yeah, which is really good.
Right.
And he's able to have time to get her out of there before anyone else sees it. And the other thing that they do great is it keeps opening that little door in that little room that he shoved her in. But we never see anything. We don't see like
hurting it, yeah.
Yeah, but we don't get like the cops seeing the body and seeing what it looks like or something like that, So it really plays into that. And then, of course, at the end, his wife actually arrives, and we know for a fact that this isn't her, this other body. I mean, we pretty much get that by this point, but we know for a fact. But they also don't drill it in. It's not explained. It's not, shit, that was a weird body, It's just what it is, and I really like that balance as well.
All right, so you mentioned him shooting the monster, or mentioned the shooting the monster that becomes his wife. We have to talk about that whole scene because he shoots the monster, right? As James, I guess we can name her the Booger Monster.
Booger Monster.
The fish had come to life. He had shot it. Then she appears and shoots it. Out he's outside with the shotgun and Harold sees him and he calls the police and
you're right.
you can't see anything because of the bushes. So as a viewer, you're thinking like, oh, fuck, she's out there. He's calling the police. And then when he says, I think it's a suicide attempt, because he's like, oh, shit, he's got a shotgun. You know, he's, you know, I've heard about these authors. You know, Hemingway did this shit. I'm sure there was a moment where he's sitting there thinking like, I need to do what's right for this guy. Not because I'm a fan, not because I'm his neighbor, but oh shit, this looks bad because I just saw him, you know, the other night, like acting all weird and stuff. So maybe he is, you know, he's got some issues. But the fact that he calls the police, says, hey, there's a, you know, I believe it's an attempted suicide. And the way the police show up, I love two things about this scene. One, how quick Roger is to clean up the scene, right? As far as making it look like, oh, I didn't shoot a gun. I was out here cleaning it. And it just went off, you know? And then two, how the police are kind of like, they show up and they immediately like draw their guns and it's like, hey, put the weapon down. And he's like, I was just cleaning it. And I'm just thinking like, oh, Roger, you can't make this movie in 2021. And you definitely can't change who Roger is. But you know, as soon as they do it, it's Bubba from In the Heat of the Night and the chief from 21 Jump Street. Yep. And I just sit there and I'm like, are they only ever cops? Is that all these guys ever get to be? But the fact that they show up and they're like, hey, you know, it's still illegal to discharge a firearm. I'm gonna have to give you a citation. And his immediate response is like, oh, thank you.
Thank you.
That should be a sign right there, huh? Yeah. White guy just accepts the citation.
But even beyond that, he's happy about the citation. And then the other police officer looks at him and says, hey, I know you're a busy man. I have something to ask you. And he immediately goes to, hey, no problem. I'll do it for you. And it's like, yeah, I just want to go to the bathroom. So he immediately starts thinking like, oh, you want an autograph because of who this other cop said I am. And you're a fan. You love me. You know, where he was bothered by that, you know, a couple of days prior, or at least earlier in the film. But now there's this moment of like, oh, shit, I could use this to my advantage. Oh, and it's fucking useless because he wants to use my bathroom. He doesn't give a shit who I am. Which is
Who asks to use a bathroom that way? I know you're busy. Can I pee in your toilet? Like what?
Hey, he was
when you gotta go, you gotta go.
Like you have a gun. You can use the bathroom if you want.
Pee on the bushes. I don't care.
That's a citation.
What I thought was funny is how they quickly played off any suspicion that was going on. At first, you thought maybe George Wendt was suspicious, but there again, it does seem like he was concerned the whole movie. He called the wife, you know, and said so. I thought maybe he's suspicious, and then he tried to bust through the door. And then the cops were maybe suspicious, but oh, you're a famous writer, so it must be okay. And they come inside, they see the shotgun shells. Oh well, you know, obviously, you know, you have to have it loaded sometime. So even though I had that kind of, like I said, telltale heart, Black Cat kind of feel. Where are they going to discover the body kind of thing? I mean, it was really every little suspicion they had was quickly fizzled out, which was either very weird or very funny, and I can't tell which.
I mean, I thought it worked really well. It really plays into what we expect from horror movies, and just toys with us, you know, but not in normal ways for the time, like the whole coffee thing. Like you get the tension, but you don't. It's such a weird balance.
Yeah, it is.
Like all of the tension is in Roger's head. Like even the audience isn't fully buying into it. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Such a weird balance.
I was just hoping, and this is a rewatching complaint. I was just hoping that the police in going into the house would have looked around a little bit more. That would have made him sense like, you know, hey, this is a welfare call because somebody said that, you know, we got a call saying that there was an attempted suicide. The gun went off. You know, can we come in and check out the house? As opposed to, hey, you want to come in and have some coffee? You know, it should have been. And maybe Bubba. I'm just gonna call him Bubba anyway. Maybe Bubba was looking at this as you know, as a way to get in the house. Hey, offer me coffee. Hey, I don't need probable cause. I can go in. He invited me. But just to look around and say like, hey, what happened to that fish?
Why didn't they use that? They could have used that.
Great thing. Because he could have said, "Oh, I was cleaning it in the house. The gun went off. I shot the fish.
Yes.
And then I came out here because I was like, oh my God, I didn't realize that the gun was loaded, and I brought it out here because, to make sure, just so I didn't shoot off the gun again, so I can clean it outside." But
I think that would have worked so much better, and it would have added like suspicion on the cops' parts. Like, that's the stupidest shit I've ever heard.
I would have loved for the fish to start moving at that point.
Just behind Bubba while he's staring straight faced at us. Yeah.
That's him, officer.
His Virgil Tibbs friend is just ignoring it.
Then he starts singing something about "take me to the river, put me in the water."
All I could think during the Marlin scene was "take me to the."
I was live tweeting while I was watching this, and Jeff was like, "I can't read your thread anymore. This is ruining it all." Because I was like, "Oh no, his big mouth Billy Bass is acting up," and shit like that. But anyway.
Well, you know what? That's another thing that time gives you, right? So seeing that scene in the 80s might be a little bit terrifying, might be a little bit funny, right?
Yeah.
Seeing it post 90s or post late 90s, it's funny as hell because of the big mouth Billy Bass, the big mouth singing Billy Bass, because that's all you can think about at that moment. Yep. It would be just like somebody, I don't know, just with any of the type of stuff that we've been exposed to, you're going to have a different perspective, you're going to have a different reaction to it. Whereas now it's definitely more comedic than it is horrifying. Because if you're in a movie and you start seeing shit moving around, or you start having stuff moving around like a big marlin or, furniture or, all the gardening tools in the shed start moving around, you're just thinking like, okay, this is kind of fucked up. Now they would turn it into a Pixar movie where it's like, what if garden tools had feelings?
I do like that they used the tools. Like,
tool story.
I like that they came back. Yeah.
Yeah. The second time you see the tools is so fantastic. It's probably like one of my favorite parts of this whole film because it was totally unexpected for me. Like I'm used to the tools come alive and attack you in this part. I'm not used to they show up later and save your life by accident. That's hilarious.
Like, they kind of did a stretch on the Evil Dead thing. Like they took a lot of Evil Dead moments and they kind of stretched them out. And I love that he opens the door and there are the gardening tools just hanging out in his son's bedroom. But one of my favorite moments of the entire movie though has to be when he realizes they're still in that room and the wife creature's attacking him and he's like, aha, and he opens the door. Boom, come flying out, and that's what ends up killing the wife creature. And then in a perfect use of music, You're No Good starts playing as he's dragging the body, which one of my favorite moments. And I mean, there it's kind of clear that we're self-aware. We know we're making a horror comedy right here. But that whole sequence is.
I can never separate this movie from that song and that song from this movie.
And then when he's trying to bury the pieces, well, it's the whole body at the first part. And it starts like crawling out and reaching for Tanya and that kind of stuff. All of those scenes are so good, And then when Tanya leaves and he's just like unleashing on the body, like just beating the fuck out of it. I loved that. And then they just have this great cut. We don't spell it out. We don't go for it. We go straight for the punchline. He beats the fuck out of it. We switch scenes, and there's just all these little tiny holes that have been dug,
scattered,
and pieces of the body have been scattered throughout the yard. So good. But since I brought up Tanya,
let's get to Tanya.
Let me tell you how much I hate Tanya. Somehow, these people that lost their kid, and we talked about how it seems unimportant to the mom. They're not the worst parent in this film because we have Tanya. And Tanya is like, oh, you're single, huh? Do you like to play? And she's building all this up so that she can drop off her kid and abandon him to somebody who lost a fucking kid. Like, is she trying to get her kid lost? What is she doing? Is date night that important? I don't know.
Who hasn't been setting off the most I'm well-adjusted vibes the whole movie either?
She might know there's a body in that bag. She cares that little. And she doesn't take no for an answer. She shows up. She just drops off the kid. This guy could be like, fuck this shit, I'm out, and leave this kid in this house. Tanya doesn't care.
What if she is trying to get rid of her son, though?
Maybe. Yeah.
I think that would be great.
I've heard about this house.
It's her plan, man. Like, she's going to drop this kid off so that he loses the kid, and then she can sue him for the house so she can have the pool she's been swimming in. I'm not even convinced she used to swim there when the aunt was there. I think she's like, well, the old lady's dead.
Yeah, now that I'm going to put on a swimsuit. That's two neighbors that just randomly show up on your property, your house, and your yard at will.
Yes.
I'm just using your pool, just popping into your house for coffee. Man.
You know, I couldn't help but notice we don't see Harold while the kid's there. So maybe that's where Tanya was. The two of them are just trying to get the house.
They were working in tandem.
But yeah, Tanya bugs me so much, but mostly because I feel like this part of the storyline is just jammed in here to make us nervous. And it loses me because it makes no sense. There's no tension for me. There's nothing.
Can I offer a counterpoint to that?
Yes, please do.
Because I agreed with you. I remember as a kid, and even when I was watching it the day that you saw my tweet, watching it again probably for the first time in decades, I was like, this is pointless. You just completely stalled your Momentum movie with this ridiculous scene, this crazy parent. That said, first of all, I freaking love the hand on the back of Robert's head.
Yes.
Which I do love that whole sequence. I don't know how the hell that can got flushed down the toilet, but
yes.
Because that's a
I like that it lands perfectly too. Like it lands wrist first into
right. It just like woo. Like I mean, I literally had to pay a couple $100 to get wipes cleaned out of my septic system, but this guy's just flushing hands down his toilet. But whatever. And like you mentioned in your tweet, you gotta love the line, "How about a nice plastic bag?" Because that was
man. Yeah, maybe he is the worst parent. Yeah. Oh, you want something to play with? How about a nice plastic bag? Holy shit.
It was a horrible line, but I feel like this whole scene is very forced. It comes out of nowhere. It makes Tanya just look horrible. I do love the payoff at the end, though, and we talked about you watching this again as a parent, and this is the guy that lost his son. He rescues his son from whatever the hell, where the wild things are, trolls that try and drag him up the chimney. But then that bathtub scene. I love that because for that first moment, you're kind of seeing like, okay, well, he's bonding with a child and this and that, and he puts him down and everything. So I do feel like there was a little bit of a payoff to kind of sell that moment that really hadn't been established of how much, his son is on his mind. So at the end of it, I kind of, like I said, do I like the whole sequence? Do I think it fits? No, I think it should have been set up better. But I do like that payoff where he has that brief moment where he gets the bond with a boy again, for the first time in however long this has been. Maybe I'm just the sap, but I did like that moment.
No, I'll give you that. I do feel that it should be set up better though. Like you said.
It wasn't set up well enough.
I will add, it's a little creepy to give a bath to somebody else's kid when
Yes.
But if you're babysitting, I guess.
Is he though? Is he? At least he didn't give the kid some Chinese food and beer at midnight.
I see that too. I'm torn too. I did think that too. I'm like, okay, this is weird. But I think what they were trying to go for, and maybe it was all done badly, and it probably was, and I'm defending it. But I think it just wanted to give that moment where he went from, my God, I don't want to be with this kid, to, man, I really miss having a little boy around,
Right.
So that's,
you get to see how he actually is a good dad, or at least a good father figure, right? And you get that moment as a viewer, I could see it as a useful scene useful sequence because you get to see how fatherly he is. And I guess in a sense, as a viewer, you get to process like what this guy is missing. Yeah, it makes sense in that aspect, but it doesn't make sense from Tanya's perspective. It should have been one of those things where she'd asked him earlier, like, hey, is it okay if, But I think even that would have probably killed the opportunity, because I think if she had asked him, hey, would you mind watching my kid? He would have said, oh, no, I've got, there's some serious shit going on in my house. But by setting it up with the honeypot, with this idea of sex or some type of romance or whatever, because he's immediately distracted by that, because he, in all honesty, that's what he's thinking about. He's thinking about getting laid at that moment, right? Because Tanya's in his pool in a bathing suit, being all sweet and saying kind of these, hey, you like to play, huh? All those things. He's already in, and I think Tanya knows what she's doing. It's not an issue of she's careless with her words. I mean, I think she's using the innuendo and understanding how this guy's going to take it, and like, oh, fuck it, I can get this guy to watch my kid.
Mm-hmm.
Further proof that she'd never used this pool before.
She kind of pulls a dick move at the end, too, because when she's coming in and she's unloading everything on him, he's like, well, this and this and this, and he absolutely needs this big, giant-ass pillow to sleep with. When she leaves at the end, where's that pillow when she's taking him home? So apparently none of that was that important. So not only did she just leave him with this complete stranger, she doesn't even care about the favorite pillow that her son apparently needs to sleep with. But so we can establish Tanya's kind of the worst character in this movie.
Look, we all know what that pillow was really about. Here's what the pillow's really about.
Okay.
She was leaving it behind to mark her territory to any other single moms who might want to have their kids stay over there. Oh, and speaking of his son, as far as this trek, or at least this journey to go get his son back, it all starts, or at least I shouldn't say it all starts at this point, but we get an indication of where things are going because of when he invites Harold over at midnight and he's like, hey, come over here at midnight. Come over tonight. And then he explains to him like, hey, at midnight, we're going to catch this raccoon. Because he's trying to let him know, like, oh, yeah, all this shit sounds weird that I've said to you about, oh, there's a ghost or there's a monster in this closet, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, it really wasn't, man. It was a raccoon, and it's created a hole in the ceiling, and if we can catch it, we can get rid of it, because I really don't want that thing in my house, right? So going through this whole spiel of what he expects out of Harold, and Harold, I actually love Harold for this whole scene because it is a great comic moment. When you shoot it, make sure I'm out of the way. I even watching it as an adult, or watching it, I don't even know how many times it's been I've watched it in totality, but even watching it now, I keep expecting, like, Harold gets so scared that he accidentally shoots Roger while he's trying to shoot the monster, right? I'm expecting that, but it's still funny the way that it is. He successfully hits him. He successfully gets the monster hooked with the harpoon gun. And because of the way it works, he is able to get, I'm sorry, not able to get it, but Roger's foot gets caught on the line and drags him into the closet, right? Mm-hmm. But that whole moment where Harold is like, don't worry, buddy, you can count on me. I won't give up. And as soon as he's getting the words out, the line is gone.
Let's just take Harold out of the picture for whatever reason. I don't know why.
I got to say, though, I don't know that he would have been upset if that happened. Like,
I get to be part of your story. Yay!
Now all the Chinese food is mine.
All he's being dragged away. It's, oh no, but I'm your number one fan. But yeah, when he gets dragged in there, I mean, you get to see back in Vietnam, and Ben, of course, is being that guy that, he's trying to be that stereotypical gung ho, army guy in the war. Like, I'm going to win this war myself. I'm going to go kill all of Charlie. So you're kind of already annoyed with him because he's almost like, these movies came out at different times, or at least within a couple of years of each other. But he's kind of like the character Animal Mother from Full Metal Jacket. Where he's annoying because he's so like, oh, I'm going to go kill every one of these VC myself. I'm going to do all this. Fuck listening. I'm going to do it my way. But you get this moment where Ben is going off, and Roger's telling him, like, get down, be quiet. They're around here. Just chill out. Wait. We need to find our other guys, because if we don't, we're going to get caught up in this, and there's going to be friendly fire. We might kill them. They might kill us, right? And before there's that moment, the Viet Cong descend and shoot up Ben a good bit, and then Roger is basically given the choice, or given the request to end his suffering. And I'm sorry, not a memory. It's him being thrust into the memory as opposed to him remembering what happened. So he makes the decision not to do it. He grabs his survival knife and doesn't stab him, doesn't slit his throat, doesn't pull out a gun and shoot him, doesn't end his suffering. And we find out when he comes back from the dead, he's like, look, you should have, even when he's being dragged off, he says, hey, I'm going to make you pay for this, as he's being carried off by the Vietnamese.
What a weird threat.
Yeah. My thing would have been like, fucking shoot me now. Shoot me. Not, I'll remember this. I'll get my payback.
You got one more chance. Here it is.
We'll meet again, Mr. Bond. Oh.
I wrote down on my notes, that's a recipe for a ghost. But it did get into, I guess, a serious matter, though, because there were those moments that from any war that you can look at least in the 20th century on, whether it was World War I, World War II, Korea, Vietnam, where are those moments where someone is specifically requesting, hey, I'm not going to make it, make me comfortable, by overdosing them with morphine, or just, giving them something that they will just slip away. Right. And this isn't like a moral issue for Roger. It's not something like, oh, this is against my religion, or I don't believe in this, whatever. It's seriously like he doesn't feel he's strong enough to do it, which I think is an interesting way to look at it, because that's what Ben kind of calls him out on later, is like, you were too much of a coward to kill me. You couldn't kill me back then, and I had to suffer because you wouldn't do it. And it immediately makes me think, it may make other people think about it when they're watching it, is, where is that line that you draw where you understand that I need to stop somebody's suffering. I need to help somebody by helping them die or just killing them in a merciful act, as opposed to letting them continue suffering, or even your pets for that matter.
Well, I think the movie brings it home even more by it being not just about he's ending the suffering. It sells the point that he's ending the potential that the Viet Cong are going to come in and take him and torture him for several weeks, right, which we see is what ends up happening because he was left out there. They were able to continue the suffering as well too. So, that potential was there as well. But I think that really kind of sets off that payoff, because he does get taunted by Ben at the end, the zombie Ben, skeleton Ben, whatever we want to call him. You were weak. But when it came time, when everything was coming to a head, when he knew Jimmy's life was in danger, then that's where he finally found his strength to fight back, to do something.
Yeah, I think you bring up a good point, because it is fatherhood that I mean, we're talking about this as fathers as well. But it is fatherhood or being a parent that changes your perspective on a lot of things, where, I've talked with James about this before, where I'm a very easygoing person. And my perspective is, you can call me whatever name you want. You can, right, taunt me. I don't give a shit. I'm at the age now, I'm like, I don't give a shit. Call me whatever. Okay, whatever. Oh, not a big deal. But if you threaten to harm my child, my wife, then it's game on. It doesn't matter what you said. Like, we will have a problem. And I think that's one of those moments, because even my daughter, she's 6, she'll be 7 soon. She's asked me those questions of like, we've talked about, what would you do if somebody broke in the house, or if somebody tried to hurt me? And I told her as encoded dad language as possible. And I said, sweetie, because she even asked like, what if somebody kidnaps me? And I told her, I was like, sweetie, what I will do is I will go onto the news, or I will go and Facebook Live or something, and I will let them know that they have 30 minutes to bring you back. And she's like, why? I said, because after 30 minutes, I'm going to murder everyone in my path. And she's like, what do you mean? I was like, you're the most most important thing to me. And if somebody gets in between your safety, your health, your life, I will have no problem dispensing, doing anything. I even said if they kidnap you, I'm going to find whoever they're related to and just kidnap them. She's like, you would do that? I was like, yeah.
This might be extreme, but I think what I'll probably do is sit my kids down and show them the movie Mandy. And I'll say, if anybody does anything to hurt you, this is what's going to happen.
There you go.
This will be your dad. I will go full on Nick Cage. But yeah, I agree. Yeah.
So I look at this, and it's very reminiscent of how I view Vietnam altogether. And maybe that's just my own stereotypes from having not been in the military. And Don, you can speak to this if you want. Basically, I look at Ben and I look at Roger, and I see the two types of soldiers that have been ingrained in me my entire life from movies and whatever else of how Vietnam was. And that's the guy who's forced to be there and the guy who wants to be there and truly believes in what he's doing and maybe even enjoys it. So Don, I was wondering if you'd be willing to speak a little bit to Roger's role here and being forced to be there, and maybe how that plays into the PTSD that clearly stays with him forever.
Roger's kind of the guy who just happens to be there. I wouldn't say like he was forced to be there. It just kind of seems like he just happened to be there. Where some of the other people in that unit, you can tell there are a couple that do not want to be there at all, especially when they start handing out assignments like, oh, I need you on point. Like, no, fuck you. I'm not going. So I need you on point. No, I'm too high to go on point right now. And you got a lot of that. I mean, like I said, I had the luck of and privilege of actually speaking to a number of Vietnam veterans over the years, and some of them will tell you straight out, like, I try to forget all the shit that was over there. As soon as I came home, like, I don't want to deal with it, don't want to face it, So there are friends I serve with that I talk to, hang out with, and we don't even want to talk about what happened over. I mean, not talk about it that often because they don't want to dwell on it. And what you have with Roger here in those various scenes is he can't put it behind him because he hasn't dealt with it. And so that PTSD, that trauma that he faced, the house itself, it does make for a good therapist because it makes him face those demons, makes him face those issues, makes him face it in a weird way, but it still makes him face those issues.
So I have a follow-up question. We recently did an episode on It, and we talked a little bit about Stephen King and his obsession with Vietnam, how he's never been able to let go of it, and how it influences a lot of his work. I feel like that's true with a lot of horror. Like, especially horror of a certain age, like the 80s, 90s kind of thing. Like, you can feel this constant influence, if you will, of a war that people didn't want to be in, that they knew they couldn't win, et cetera, et cetera. What is it, from a historical point of view, what is it that makes Vietnam, how do I want to phrase this? So, like, World War II, like, my grandpa would he wouldn't talk about what he did there. Wouldn't talk about his time there, but he always talked about the job with respect and with like a heroic kind of air to it, right? Okay. Vietnam, very, very different. What is it specifically that traumatized this generation so much more, or at least it feels that way to me, than the others? Like, I don't feel like we got that same influence from other wars in horror or other movies. Except war movies, obviously. But like, Vietnam just like constantly has this thing that brings everybody back to the trauma. Why was this more traumatic is my question.
That's a good question. I think because people were finally being honest about warfare. Whereas, if I'm going to make a comparison between World War II and Vietnam, it's also the way it was treated in the media. Right. And I'm talking about the news media, films, books, all those things. It was a lot of the glorification of what the mission was. To end fascism, to get rid of Hitler, to stop the imperial call of the Japanese, right? So you have there was some brutal shit that went down. I met a guy who was a World War II and a Korean War veteran, right? He served in the Pacific. He was in the Marines, I believe, in the Pacific, and he was in the Army when the Korean War took place. I might be getting it wrong, but he might have been in the Navy and then into the Army. But he talked about comparing those two, and he said, the stuff I saw, paraphrasing him, the stuff I saw in Korea was 10 times worse than what I saw in the Pacific Theater. And Korea gets known as the Forgotten War because, it takes place in between the two biggest wars up to that point that the United States had been in. And I mean, up to the point of this film that we've been in, which was World War II and Vietnam. And those two wars themselves are almost diametrically opposed, where there wasn't a clear definition of what the end goals were. There wasn't a clear definition of, even rules of engagement, because you were facing guerrilla warfare in Vietnam as opposed to, I wouldn't even say traditional warfare, but, conventional warfare in the case of World War II, where people were wearing uniforms, where you didn't have to worry about, hey, the guy who's serving as your guide is actually working for the VC or for the Viet Cong, or in something like the Tet Offensive, where you realize you're not safe anywhere. And I think that was the issue with Vietnam more so than it was with World War II. Whereas when World War II was taking place after the war, even the 60s, 70s, 80s, even through, the late 90s, we were still presenting World War II, and not always an uber patriotic way, but we were presenting it in the way of, like, there were defined goals. There was something that needed to be done. There was a mission to accomplish. This is what it is. As opposed to Vietnam, where at a certain point it was very confusing as far as, like, what the hell it's about. But I think the treatment of the veterans from World War I is completely different than the treatment of veterans of World War II.
I wonder how much of it also goes from, like, World War II, you have a clear-cut enemy.
Right.
And then we started fighting wars against ideologies.
Yes.
And you can never clearly win that. Anyway, thank you for indulging that. I know that was a long thing, but I think it's really important to this film, because I don't think House by any means is the only one that touches Vietnam. I did have, while I was live tweeting this, one of my followers and I started a conversation about it. He pointed out that this is one of the few movies that uses Vietnam so much, and yet it's not the main focal point.
Right.
And I couldn't think of anything else where that really hits at the same level. Like, there's things I could think of where the whole movie's about that, and there's things where it's like it was one line of characterization to tell you about this man. Oh, he saw some shit in Vietnam, Mm-hmm. But I couldn't think of anything else like this, where it's a huge B story, but it's not the whole point.
I would probably say the only one I would compare that to would probably be Born on the 4th of July, because, or even Jacob's Ladder.
Oh yeah,
I would probably include, but at least with Born on the 4th of July, you've got maybe 5-10 minutes of Vietnam, and it's all at once, and the rest of the movie is about this guy trying to, I guess, rehabilitate himself back into society, because he's been paralyzed because of the war. He's not getting, necessarily good treatment. Well, I'm sorry, he's not getting any treatment for that matter at the VA. And then you see him just trying to live, and he eventually goes to Mexico and basically says, "Fuck America, I'm going to go to Mexico." Then, he comes back and crashes the Republican National Convention. You get to see how this guy is adjusting to life and trying to deal with that trauma in kind of the same way that Roger does in this film. I mean, of course, it's not an issue of regretting what he didn't do in Born on the 4th of July. It's regretting what he did do and what he saw and dealing with that. But yeah, Jacob's Ladder would be another one. But other than that, I got to agree. There's not that much else out there that I know of.
Maybe not the best example, but Forrest Gump would be another one, I think.
That's a good example. I mean, he's dealing with Bubba, as far as the loss of Bubba and it's straight weird.
Lieutenant Dan.
Mm-hmm.
Well, yeah. Lieutenant Dan is processing a lot of different things, though.
Yeah.
But an interesting little trivia piece to mention how willing we weren't how willing we were not to talk about openly and honestly talk about Vietnam. Forrest Gump has an anti-war speech, but they cut it. And when they were doing focus groups or something, when they showed like the first cuts, they were like, well, we don't want to piss off the Vietnam vets. We don't want to piss off these people by saying, having our character, or we don't want to become divisive by having the main character who's very lovable, very likable, to take an opinion about this. So that scene where this one, guy from the Pentagon happens to show up and unplugs all the PA equipment is when Forrest was given the speech, and he basically talks about, oh, when I was over in Vietnam, I saw this, and my best friend died, and he died in my arms, and my lieutenant, he lost both of his. So he's explaining like all the people that died and all the friends that he lost over there, and that's why the guy in the American flag shirt, like at the end when they do come back to him saying like, oh, that's all I got to say about that. That's when he comes over and he hugs him and he's like, oh man, that was powerful stuff. That was basically telling him like, holy shit, you were telling them what was really going on over there. So wow. Forrest Gump fits.
Wow, that's great. I didn't realize that scene was even there. Originally. Yeah,
it was cut. I mean, I think you'd have to look for it on YouTube, but it was cut from the theatrical release. And I only know this because I watched one of those, the making of or behind the scenes or whatever thing that the HBO used to do. They probably still do it now, but there was one on Forrest Gump, and I watched it. I heard the speech, and I was like, holy shit, why didn't they leave that in there?
I think it was in the novel, too, wasn't it? If I remember
think so.
Correctly. I think it was in the novel. But I think, too, also coming from a family, like I never served myself, and I have utmost respect for anyone who has ever served the country. I come from a family of military members. My father and my grandfather were Iraq War and World War II. But I think too, just in the limited experience I have and the study of history I have, I think another thing with Vietnam and the reason why it kind of has a sticking point for people is that America just likes to win.
Yes.
We have this idea that we want to win, and you look back at the Civil War, when the Civil War was breaking out, people were setting up tables and chairs and they were going to come watch this war, and it was going to be glorious and we're going to win. And obviously as the war went on and people saw how horrific it was, that changed. With World War I and World War II, we were able to say definitively, look, we were victorious. We stormed into Normandy and we did this and we won. And they could gloss over the casualties and the horror of it. Yeah. Whereas with Vietnam, they couldn't really do that. I mean, we went into this basically guerrilla warfare country, where they were in the jungle and we couldn't see them, and we were getting slaughtered, and like Don said, we didn't know who to trust and what was going to happen, and there was no clear victor. America couldn't convincingly say that we won Vietnam. So then it just became a matter of, okay, let's just get out. We'll kind of brush this under the rug and nobody talk about it. And I feel like that was kind of a big part too. And then the people that actually were there that had to experience it and all the nightmare that it was, they were kind of left to fend for their own demons. And I think that's kind of where, William Katt's character comes in, that he had these demons that he wasn't able to process with anybody because it wasn't allowed to be talked about. Maybe I could be way off on that.
No, I like that a lot. Yeah.
Hell, Oliver Stone, when he wrote Platoon, he wrote it after he came back from Vietnam, and no one would buy it. He couldn't get anyone to make the film, and so he had to make several films before that one in order to backers for that Vietnam film, because no one wanted to talk about Vietnam in the 70s, or at least in a raw and gritty way. So when the movie came out in the 80s, people were looking at like, holy shit, why didn't we have this movie a while ago? Because this actually gives us an indication, at least a better indication of what was going on from a racial perspective, from a socioeconomic perspective, from a political, even from a geopolitical and warfare standpoint, where it was clear, like top to bottom, nobody knew what the hell was going on. Mm-hmm. And yeah, it was that whole thing about winning as well, because just to reference the other film we talked about with Full Metal Jacket, there's that moment where this colonel walks up to Joker and he says, "Hey, why are you wearing that pin?" one that says the peace pin and has "Born to Kill" on his helmet, and he gives that whole sports analogy about like, hey, we're just trying, you need to step up and help us win the big game. If you can stop with this peace stuff, we'll be able to win. You need to be on our team, and we can win this thing. Because you don't want to be known as the loser,
Right.
And I think that's what it comes down to. And I'm glad you brought that up. That's what it comes down to with respect to that war is you're so used to we won, and well, we really didn't lose that war because it wasn't a war. It was more because war wasn't declared. So we didn't really lose it. In fact, you know what? Technically, it never happened because Congress has to. And you sit there like, but you still had a shitload of people die, get injured, come back with all types of trauma. So don't tell me it wasn't a war.
Right.
It wasn't a police action. It was a war. The people that were there, they're going to regard it as a war.
All right. Should we jump ahead to saving Jimmy? Are we ready to jump ahead to the end of this?
We can save Jimmy.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. Let's save Jimmy.
Ben comes back from the dead and we have all these great scenes. But the whole point is that Ben took the kid, right? Mm-hmm. Number one, I find this symbolism interesting because he's literally taking the life of a young man in exchange for what he views as his life as a young man, right? Mm-hmm. But Ben's a little different because he's mad that he didn't get killed. Well, I mean, he got killed, but not the way he wanted to go out. And I find this whole revenge story a little weird. Like, it doesn't really add up correctly for me. Is it just like this is the most important thing to Roger, Jimmy? Is that why he takes it? Like, there had to be another time that he could have fucked with Roger at some point. And also, like, how did he know that he'd be at the house? And I don't know. So much of this bothers me. It doesn't add up, but it doesn't have to.
Maybe the house is what needed to manifest it. Maybe Ben wasn't there at all, but it was the house manifesting what it knew was kind of this deep-rooted thing. So once he was there, the house could read him. He knew the house knew that the house. I mean, obviously he lost Jimmy at the house, so that was very real there. But the house also knew. I'm really personifying the house, aren't I?
No, that's good. That makes so much more sense to me. That makes way more sense than a contrived plot on Ben's part. Yes.
I feel like the house took on a life of its own, and I do have to step back because I do like there was a cinematic moment leading into this that I do really enjoy, and that is the medicine cabinet. And a big part of that is during the entire movie. If you watch any horror movies, if you're a horror movie fan, every time that medicine cabinet closes, you're thinking something's going to be in there.
Right.
Because it really does. They really do focus on that. Like, okay, he opened the cabinet, he closed the cabinet. He closed the cabinet, he looked in the cabinet. And so you're expecting a Candyman jump scare, or you're expecting something to be in the background, a ghost or a zombie or something.
Like, I was literally counting it. I was like, okay, this is the third time. When he closes it, something's got to be standing there.
It really sets that up, and it never happens. But when they do it, and I do kind of like the way Steve Miner or the writer set this up, whoever came up with the idea, that, it's going to come into play, but not in the way you think it is. So he goes back and he rushes down, he looks at the painting of his aunt, and he pulls back that one last sheet, and there's Jimmy in the medicine cabinet. And so that's where it comes finally back into play. It was never meant for a jump scare element. That wasn't the plot focus. It was going to be that's where the portal was. And so he goes back, and sure enough, he breaks it, and there's the portal. I do like that little moment, too, where he reaches around the outside of the window to see if it's anything out there. But I think that's kind of what I thought about it, that it wasn't necessarily Ben was coming back. It wasn't necessarily that Sandy was coming back. It was the house manifesting these ideas for whatever reason because we know what happened to the aunt. Maybe she had her own demons. Maybe she was also a World War I vet, and she left someone, or something. The house obviously was torturing her enough to the point where she took her life. And I think that's what the house wanted to do to Roger as well. And so I don't think we actually saw the return of Ben per se. I think we saw a manifestation based on fear.
I like that a lot more. Yeah. I do have one issue. Like, how did he know breaking the mirror would work? Like, what if he broke the mirror and that ruined the portal?
That's a good point. Now you'll never get Jimmy.
What a terrible ending that
Also,
would be.
My bad.
I could see that being part of the movie. That would be a very Twilight Zone ending, though, wouldn't it? Like, you broke your one way to save him after all this.
You just have Harold walk in. He's chewing on some food. Nope. Well, now you've done it.
Anyway,
like I
beer.
told your aunt. That's the only way.
How about that game we talked about? Speaking of which, what the hell is that pterodactyl thing?
I called it the what did I call it? The skeleton bat or something on my thread. It was interesting, but what? Why is it there?
Why is that there? Yes. Good aim though. Love the way it flips the shotgun. I love that. Flips the shotgun, one shot, boom.
I found it kind of weird that Roger can go back to Vietnam through the closet, but then he has to go through the portal and then through this like really dark area and down this long rope and fight the skeleton bat with the gun and whatever else to get back to where he was from the closet. Like, why didn't he just wait till midnight and go through the closet?
Well, we already talked about the whole the way the time works and everything. So maybe each one of those portals is set on a different timer, or at least different hours of operation.
Ooh, it just moves around the house.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of like what was that episode of the Vanishing Girl from the Twilight Zone?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Or yeah, where the guy the person. Yeah. He reaches into the wall. He's like, oh, well, this portal's only going to be here for so much longer. And then I don't know where it's going to be next.
Right.
Or if it's going to close, or, basically giving you an indication of we don't know what's going to happen. So let's get her now. So it's possible well, even then,
and Poltergeist.
What was it with?
Also
yeah,
covered.
Poltergeist.
Yeah,
The
TV, the closet.
Place.
Yeah.
Yep.
So what we're saying, James, is there can be lots of portals in your house. You never know.
Well,
You could
shit.
You could have 3 portals to South Vietnam right now as we speak.
You know what?
Oh,
After a year of sitting in my house, I will take a portal to wherever the fuck we're going. All right. So, were either of you disappointed that Jimmy was easy to get to once he was there? like there's no I don't know. I was expecting like some big fight over him and like barely making it out with him. And it's like, oh, there he is. Let's let him out of the cage and take him back. I don't know. It was a little weird to me.
Popping up in the pool. That was easy.
I did like that they come up through the pool. That was a nice touch.
Yeah, that was a cool, like not necessarily reversal, but yeah, I guess return to his disappearance. But I wasn't disappointed with it because you had Ben's zombie Ben, and there's a really cool joke that I liked because it's a very 80s joke and almost a Richard Mull type joke. But he's coming back. He runs out of ammo. He's firing the M60 at Roger. And then it's empty, and he's like, come back from the dead and run out of ammo? I was just like, oh, my God, that is funny. But I didn't think it was too easy. I think it was an issue of he was finally ready to deal with that grief. So, his son is trapped. And I guess you could see this as even a metaphor or an allusion to how people who haven't dealt with trauma can't appreciate the stuff that are around them or can't take advantage of the stuff that's around them. So maybe he wasn't able to enjoy his son as his son because he wasn't able to get over the shit that he had experienced and felt guilty about. And the same thing. I mean, you could even see it as writer's block. Maybe there is no Jimmy. It was he couldn't write about the book without facing what had taken place.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's a lot there. I think it really comes down to he was finally willing to face what the issue was. And once he faced it, kind of like writer's block or any other similar type issue, he was able to get past it. But I did like the grenade in the rib cage.
Oh, that was great.
I was glad they did that because I did one of my gripes was I felt like the first death of Ben was a little too easy. It seemed like the belt.
Yeah.
That seemed to be a little like that's a 1 in a million shot there, and he just like beep boom pulled him down.
Yeah.
So I was glad that he had that return of Ben where he was able to kind of Nancy him, Freddy Krueger him, and say I'm not afraid of you anymore. And
yes.
That was what didn't harm him. And but that does kind of sell the point, Don, you were making too, which is that he had finally faced it. He had finally faced everything that was holding him back, and once he did, then he was able to kind of finish him off.
What is with the
I'm
cliffs?
glad he didn't give him a hug.
Why did he open his door and see cliffs there?
Yeah. Like, what is? Did I miss something? Why is there a fucking cliff there?
I think it's just one of those things about a portal. where it's gonna maybe he's afraid of heights. Because I like you, I didn't see anything that alluded to that previously, where it was kind of like,
yeah,
it felt really weird to me.
No, I agree. That seemed kind of out of nowhere. All of a sudden, the house is on a cliff.
Well, good. As long as it wasn't just me, that's the important part. No. Anyway, what do you guys have left? Anything?
Get a cliffhanger in a movie. No. I mean, we touched everything that I think is important. The only thing I don't like about this movie, or at least the thing that's kind of a sticky issue for me, is just the ending is too. We're gonna wrap it up in a bow at the ending. Where the mom shows up in the cab in the taxi. Jimmy, she hugs Jimmy, and Roger's just standing there in front of his house as it's starting to burn down from the grenade. But other than that, I mean, but even with that, I don't know how else you could end it.
All right, hear me out. Tanya shows up with her kid. Oh, and then Jimmy's like, "Oh, somebody to play with," and Roger's like, "No," and he grabs him and runs back into the house.
And the house explodes.
What if Tanya and the kid aren't real, and they're a manifestation of the house?
Oh.
Well, what would be the reach of the house? Because it seems like it's just on the property. Because he sees her. Well, he's standing on the property when he sees her.
Yeah. Does he ever see her when he's not on the property?
Holy shit. God damn.
Because she's in the pool.
That would explain why she was in the pool.
Huh.
Damn it.
I'm dumbfounded and excited, that is headcanon for me now. Boom.
Where Harold is definitely real. But then again, I'm questioning whether or not he's real.
Do we know he's... Yeah, right. Do we know?
I'm questioning that now because I had one problem with Harold's character as far as like where he was. When Roger runs out of the house while he's in full army gear, right after he's set off the cameras and everything and pulled the door open.
Roger doesn't leave the porch.
But Roger slides down onto the sidewalk, right?
Okay. Still on property.
Harold, right? No. I'm saying that's why I'm having a problem with believing that Harold might be real. Harold is in his yard with his dog. Right.
Harold's real, and I can prove it. Harold steals the book and calls the ex-wife.
That is true. Good point.
But Harold never interacts with Tanya and never mentions her. I maintain Tanya and the child are a manifestation of the house, and that's why their story is so fucking weird.
Yeah,
and why the hand is attached to the kid. Also, if you were going to fuck with this guy and his trauma, making him take care of a kid?
Yes.
Yeah.
I like this. I like this theory. This makes me like the Tanya storyline.
Yeah.
Okay.
Is she in the second story or anything? Yeah. But I haven't seen them.
Doesn't he sees Tanya go into her house though?
But he's on his property when he sees her.
Okay, so the house is manipulating his thoughts.
Because that's when I first it, but that's when he first sees her and he's in his yard, or he might have been on the porch, but he's on the property. Damn it, James.
It'd be amazing.
I personally. You guys are actually still more optimistic than me because I thought this story was going to end a lot darker than that. And I've seen too many horror movies, but I'm just watching that road when she gets out of the car.
So she's going to get hit by a car.
Jimmy goes running across the road, and I swear I thought for sure like a truck would totally Final Destination him. And what a messed up ending after everything he went through.
That'd be great. I'd watch that. And then you see Harold like watching it all from his window, eating food. Then he giggles.
Got some lo mein on a chopstick.
Gets them every time.
And then it's the 80s, so Harold transforms into Satan for no apparent reason at all.
No, what ends up happening is he has his own dancing, music-filled montage.
Jesus. There's a marlin in his wall, too, that starts dancing along with him. The deer head starts singing. Yeah, I can see it.
Oh my
God. This episode has officially gone on too long.
This needs to be the reboot for House. Reboot for House. Yeah.
I do actually like the idea of Jimmy dying in the street. That's pretty funny.
Running across the street to his mom. Whap!
Yeah, and the whole thing, you can't escape.
Yeah. Wow.
Guess we should talk about other movies like this one.
Well, there are three more. There are 3 more houses.
All right. So, what movies would you suggest people watch if they enjoyed this?
House
Jeff,
2.
I'm going to defer to you. Oh, House 2.
I would say House 2 at least. Maybe not 3 and 4 so much, but I would say House 2 would be one. Go ahead. Did you have one?
Oh, James.
Me?
Yeah.
I don't know. I haven't really thought about it. Well, Beetlejuice. I feel like it's got that same level of like this goes a little darker, but there's a really good horror comedy mix in Beetlejuice. Yes. Things like Tales from the Dark Side, or stuff like that. Maybe even Creepshow. Just like these nice mixes of the two. I feel like this is way funnier than it sounds. Like I said, when I read spoilers, there was nothing funny about this, and this movie was fun. I laughed repeatedly. I'll throw in 13 Ghosts just to be weird.
Okay.
I would add Dead and Breakfast. I think is a good mix of horror comedy that you might enjoy.
All right. Well, I'm going to go away from horror comedy, and I'm going to focus on, I guess, the grief and children and murdering and ghosts and all that stuff. So, The Shining, Poltergeist. We mentioned House on Haunted Hill, The Haunting, and we mentioned Jacob's Ladder. So Jacob's Ladder definitely, but I can't think of any other ones. I wrote these down earlier, and now I'm just like, damn, I knew there were like probably 10 more that would work. It would be a good, I guess, jump from House to those movies.
If we want to go trauma and lost children, but not as much comedy, I'm going to throw in El Orfanato as well.
I was going to say Orphanage, but you got it.
All right. I think that about wraps it up then. So let's kick it back to you, Jeff. You want to tell everybody where they can find you online and listen to your music? And
yes, absolutely. You can find me on my YouTube channel, Jeff Whitmire 47, and my Bandcamp page is jeffwhitmire.bandcamp.com, and you can follow me on Twitter at JeffWhitmire1.
And Jeff has very graciously allowed us to attach one of his songs to the end of this episode. So stick around and check that out. As always, I am James Sabata.
And I'm Don Guillory.
And we'll see you next week here at thenecronama.com. This is Hey There Momoa by Jeff Whitmire.
They asked me, like, what superpowers would you want? Or would you play any other character? I'm like, no, I want to be Aquaman. It's a really awesome character. It was hard to turn him into a badass. I mean, look at me.
Hey there, Momoa, what have you done to my spouse? It seems that everywhere I look, there's posters of you round my house. That's not okay. Could you leave your shirt on just one day so she'd look my way? Hey there, Momoa, she's gotten so hard to appease now that she begs me to roleplay her superhero fantasies, and I can't deny I'm more of a Marvel kind of guy, so this doesn't fly.
Woman here now.
Oh, it's causing me fatigue. Keep it in your Justice League. There's just so much I'll endure when she locks the bedroom door to binge Game of Thrones some more.
Every day, she looks at me like a hero.
Hey there, Momoa, now you've got me in a mood. Until you came into our lives, I didn't know she liked seafood, that was obscene. But she let you in her nets behind the scenes. You know what I mean.
Buckle up, buddy.
Hey there, Momoa, this obsession's got me down. She's got me playing second fiddle, and if you came to our town, she'd have a shot. What do you got that I ain't got? I'm just as hot. No, I'm not. Oh, I'd like to match your style. Say, can I bum the abs a while? Oh, you're making this too hard. Please let me be your soul lifeguard. Let me be your soul lifeguard.
My muscles start filling up.
In Braving you shot winter scenes that worked for me because it means you kept your clothes on for most of the flick. She knows you got Lisa Bonet, but in her dreams I know she'd say you're on her freebie list, so it should stick. She'd keep you in an aquarium and take you out when she wants some. I guess I'm forced to fantasize away about Scarlet J. Freebie list. Hey there, Momoa, it's clear we got off to a bad start. I didn't mean to come off wrong or take this matter close to heart. We're still okay. As long as you just stay away.
And my body's like,
Don't make me whip out my buffet
my favorite color is pink.
to serve up Aquaman fillet
Superman's dead.
with some Old Bay.
How tall are you? I think 6'5".
Oh, I'd bribe you if I can. Please let me be your frontier man. Oh, now don't you hesitate. Get your ass through a Stargate. Get your ass through a Stargate.
This snake actually got out. I come upstairs naked, and the snake had come out.
How big is the snake?
You don't want to let it out of the, I'm going to stalk you for the rest of my life, and I'm going to get you. I am a full-fledged stalker. I didn't tell her that.
Yeah.
Otherwise it'd be creepy.
What about you, Jason? Who was Momoa's first crush?
I married her.